Imagine being trapped in a metal coffin where the air is thick with diesel fumes and cordite smoke, where every breath feels like swallowing fire, and where death can come from any direction at any moment. This was the daily reality for tank crewmen during World War II, men who fought the war's most brutal battles from inside steel, fortresses that were simultaneously their protection and their prison. The word suffocating takes on multiple meanings when describing the experience of tank warfare in the 1940s. It wasn't just the literal struggle for breathable air inside these mechanical beasts, though that was certainly a constant battle. Tank crews faced suffocation in every sense, physical, psychological, and strategic. They were suffocated by fear, by the limitations of their equipment, by the crushing weight of responsibility, and yes, quite literally, by the toxic atmosphere inside their armored vehicles. The physical reality of tank combat. To understand the suffocating nature of tank warfare, we must first step inside these metal giants and experience what daily life was like for their crews. A typical World War II tank, whether it was an American Sherman, a German Panzer IV, or a Soviet T-34, was essentially a cramped, mobile fortress designed with one primary goal: delivering maximum firepower while providing reasonable protection for its occupants. The interior of a tank was a maze of machinery, ammunition, fuel, and human bodies packed into an impossibly small space. A Sherman tank, for instance, measured roughly 19 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 9 feet tall on the outside. But the actual crew compartment was far smaller, with much of the internal space occupied by the engine, transmission, ammunition storage, fuel tanks, and the massive gun mechanism. 5 men: commander, gunner, loader, driver, and bow gunner, sheikh, radio operator, had to operate effectively in this confined environment. The air quality inside a tank during combat was nothing short of horrific. The engine, typically a gasoline or diesel motor, generated enormous amounts of heat and exhaust fumes that inevitably seeped into the crew compartment despite ventilation systems. When the main gun fired, it filled the interior with acrid cordite smoke and toxic gases from the propellant. The smell was so overwhelming that many veterans described it as a combination of burning sulfur, hot metal, and death itself. Ventilation systems in World War II tanks were primitive at best. Most relied on simple fans and air vents that were often inadequate for the task of clearing the thick, choking atmosphere that developed during extended combat operations. Crews frequently had to choose between opening hatches for fresh air, exposing themselves to enemy fire and shrapnel, or enduring the suffocating conditions inside their sealed metal tomb. The temperature inside a tank could become unbearable, especially in desert conditions like those faced in North Africa, or during the intense summer fighting on the Eastern Front. Without air conditioning, internal temperatures could soar above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Crews would strip down to their underwear, but even then, the heat was overwhelming. Many tankers developed heat exhaustion, and some actually passed out from the combination of heat, toxic fumes, and stress. The psychological suffocation. Beyond the physical discomfort, tank crews faced a unique form of psychological warfare that few other soldiers experienced. They were simultaneously protected and trapped, powerful and vulnerable. This paradox created a suffocating mental environment that pushed many men to their breaking point. Tank crewmen knew that their vehicle made them a high-priority target. Enemy forces would concentrate their anti-tank weapons, artillery and aircraft against tanks, making each crew feel like they had a giant bullseye painted on their backs. The psychological weight of knowing that dozens of enemy soldiers might be actively trying to kill you specifically was enormous. The confined space amplified every emotion and fear. There was no escape from the terror when enemy shells began exploding nearby. Unlike infantry soldiers who could take cover in foxholes or buildings, tank crews had to remain at their stations, performing their duties while listening to the terrifying sound of armor-piercing rounds ricocheting off their hull. The metallic pinging and scraping sounds of near misses became a constant reminder of how close death truly was. Sleep deprivation was another form of suffocation that plagued tank crews. During major offensives, crews might operate their vehicles for days with little or no rest. They would take turns catching brief naps while others maintained watch, but true restorative sleep was nearly impossible in the cramped, noisy and dangerous environment of a combat zone. This chronic exhaustion clouded judgment, slowed reactions and created a fog of mental fatigue that could prove fatal in combat. The shared loss of personal space and privacy was particularly difficult for young men who were often away from home for the first time in their lives. In a tank, there was literally nowhere to go for solitude or reflection. Every personal moment was shared with 4 other men in conditions that would challenge even the closest of friendships. Arguments were inevitable, but they had to be resolved quickly because the crew's survival depended on perfect coordination and trust. The tactical limitations that suffocated strategy tank crews also faced suffocation in terms of tactical flexibility and strategic options. Despite their fearsome reputation, World War II tanks had significant limitations that often left their crews feeling helpless and trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Vision from inside a tank was severely limited. Crews relied on small periscopes, vision blocks, and narrow slits to see the outside world. This restricted view created dangerous blind spots that enemy infantry could exploit. Tank crews frequently described feeling blind and vulnerable, unable to see threats that might be just a few feet away from their vehicle. The commander might spot an enemy position, but communicating its exact location to the gunner while under fire was a challenge that required split-second precision and perfect teamwork. The weight and mechanical complexity of tanks made them vulnerable to breakdown at the worst possible moments. A thrown track, engine failure, or transmission problem could leave a crew stranded in enemy territory with no means of escape except on foot. Many tank crews found themselves suffocated by mechanical failures that transformed their protective armor into a death trap. German tank crews, in particular, suffered from overly complex mechanical systems that frequently broke down under combat conditions. Ammunition and fuel limitations created another form of tactical suffocation. Tank crews had to carefully manage their resources, knowing that running out of shells or fuel in the middle of a battle could be fatal. This constant awareness of dwindling supplies added another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. Crews often had to make difficult decisions about when to engage the enemy and when to conserve their ammunition for more critical targets. The social hierarchy and military suffocation. The military structure itself created a suffocating environment for many tank crewmen. The rigid chain of command meant that individual crew members had little control over their fate. Orders from higher headquarters could send them into suicidal missions or poorly planned attacks that everyone at the crew level knew were doomed to failure. Tank crews developed an intense loyalty to each other that was perhaps stronger than any other military unit except perhaps air crew. They lived together, fought together, and often died together. This created powerful bonds, but also enormous pressure. Each crew member knew that his mistakes could kill not just himself, but his 4 closest friends. The weight of this responsibility was psychologically crushing for many young men. The replacement system was particularly brutal for tank crews. When a crew member was killed or wounded, a replacement would be assigned who had no experience with the specific crew dynamics or the particular quirks of their tank. This disrupted the careful teamwork that was essential for survival and often led to tragic mistakes. Veteran crews sometimes resented new replacements, not out of cruelty, but because they knew that an inexperienced crew member was a liability that could get everyone killed. The technology gap. that suffocated hope as the war progressed. Many tank crews found themselves fighting with obsolete or inadequate equipment against increasingly sophisticated enemy weapons. This technological disadvantage created a suffocating sense of hopelessness that was particularly acute for American and British crews facing advanced German tanks like the Panther and Tiger. American Sherman tank crews in particular faced what they called Tiger fear, the knowledge that their tanks were outgunned and out-armored by the best German vehicles. A Sherman's 75mm gun could barely penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor, while a Tiger's 80mm gun could destroy a Sherman at ranges where the American tank couldn't even fight back. This created a suffocating tactical situation where Allied tank crews had to rely on numerical superiority and clever tactics to overcome technically superior opponents. The psychological impact of technological inferiority cannot be overstated. Tank crews would go into battle knowing that they were at a significant disadvantage, that their survival depended more on luck and enemy mistakes than on their own equipment's capabilities. This knowledge weighed heavily on the minds of men who were already dealing with the extreme stress of combat. And now we arrive at the heart of the matter, the part that frightens us most, but also frees us most, the acceptance that life is not lived in our control. Relationships especially remind us of this, because love is where we feel most vulnerable, most exposed, most desperate for certainty. Yet love is also where stoicism whispers its calmest wisdom. To love is to risk, and to risk is to accept that the outcome is not yours to command. You can give affection, loyalty, patience, kindness, and it may still not be enough for the other. That does not make it less valuable. That does not make you less worthy. It makes you human, and it makes them human. And in this humanity lies both beauty and pain. Perhaps right now, you are haunted by memories, the moment they looked at you differently, the silence that grew heavier with each day, the final words that broke what you thought was unbreakable. These memories come like ghosts, and you chase them, believing if you hold them tightly enough you can rewrite the past. But the past is untouchable. It is carved into stone, and no amount of longing can chip it away. The Stoics teach us to look at the past with clear eyes. It has happened, it cannot be undone. It no longer belongs to you. What belongs to you is the present moment, the breath in your lungs, the choice of how you live today. Let the ghosts visit if they must, but do not make a bed for them in your soul. They are not your companions anymore. Some nights, the loneliness will feel unbearable. You will feel that you cannot face another evening in silence, that you must reach for your phone, must send the message, must break your own boundary just to feel the illusion of connection. In those moments, remember this: you are not alone because no one loves you. You are alone because you are learning to love yourself enough not to beg. There is dignity in solitude if you choose it. There is power in sitting with your own company. If you honor it, the world will try to tell you that being alone is failure. The Stoics tell you that being at peace with yourself is the highest victory. Imagine walking along the cliffs near the great ocean road. The wind whips against you, the sea roars below, endless and untamed. You do not curse the wind for being strong. You do not demand the sea to be still. You accept them as they are, and in that acceptance you find awe, not bitterness. People are no different. They are who they are. Some will be calm seas, some will be raging storms. You cannot demand they change for your comfort. You can only decide whether you will stand beside them or whether you will walk another path. That choice is yours, and it is enough. When you realize this, a strange thing happens. You stop clinging. You stop begging, and in that stillness you discover a new kind of strength, not the strength of control, but the strength of surrender, not the strength of domination, but the strength of release. It feels like weakness at first, like giving up, but soon you realize it is the opposite. It is choosing not to waste your power where it cannot bear fruit. It is choosing to cultivate your garden instead of watering desert sand. And one day, when you look back, you will see how much has grown within you while you were no longer chasing. What was beyond you? Do not misunderstand me. This is not about pretending you do not care. This is not about lying to yourself, saying it doesn't matter when it does. It's about admitting that it matters deeply, but that it is not yours to control. It is about honoring the depth of your feeling while also honoring the boundary of your power. This balance is the essence of Stoicism. Feel fully, act wisely, release what is beyond you. You can cry, you can grieve, you can ache for what was lost, but do not let that grief chain you to someone else's will. Let the tears fall, but let them water the soil of your own growth, not drown you in their absence. And when despair whispers that you will never heal, that you will never love again, answer it with the truth of your own history. You have healed before, perhaps not from this exact wound, but from others. You have survived disappointments, betrayals, losses. Each time you thought it would break you, and each time you are still here. That is evidence. That is proof. You are more resilient than your despair admits. You are stronger than your loneliness believes. You are capable of standing again because you already have, countless times. Let us return to Marcus Aurelius, writing in his journal as the weight of empire crushed his shoulders. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. What does this mean for you? It means that the wound they inflicted does not have to define the rest of your life. You can decide that their leaving does not harm your essence. You can decide that their betrayal does not break your spirit. You can decide that though you feel pain, you will not label yourself a victim, but a survivor, a philosopher in practice, a student of resilience. This decision is yours. This power is yours, and no one can take it. So today, as you listen to these words, I invite you to take one small step. Do not try to change the entire ocean of your heart at once. Just choose one action that belongs to you, and do it with intention. Maybe it is writing the 2 columns, what I control, what I do not. Maybe it is breathing deeply instead of sending the text. Maybe it is pouring yourself a cup of tea and sitting in silence without judgment. These small steps, repeated daily, build a fortress inside you. A fortress not of stone walls, but of calm clarity. A fortress that no betrayal, no abandonment, no silence can ever breach again. And when the day comes, as it will, when someone new enters your life, you will be different. You will not hand them the keys to your peace. You will not measure your worth by their affection. You will share love freely and wisely, knowing that its return is never guaranteed and yet never necessary for your wholeness. This is the paradox of Stoicism. By releasing the need to control others, you become more capable of true connection, because you are no longer desperate. You are no longer clinging. You are free, and freedom is attractive. Freedom is magnetic. Freedom is the soil in which healthy love can finally grow. Remember, too, that you are not walking this path alone. Across the world, millions struggle with the same ache, the same longing, the same illusion of control. You are part of a human story as old as time. The Stoics walked it before you. Others walk it beside you now. And in this shared struggle, there is comfort. You are not broken beyond repair. You are simply human, learning what all humans must eventually learn, the line between what is yours and what is not. So let us end with a mantra, simple and steady, to carry into your day. Say it with me, aloud if you can, quietly if you must. I control myself, not others. I control my choices, not theirs. I control my peace, not their chaos. I control my gratitude, not their ingratitude. These words are not magic, but they are practice. Each time you repeat them, you carve them deeper into your mind, until one day they become instinct. Until one day the ache returns, and instead of reaching outward in desperation, you return inward in strength. This is the gift of Stoicism. This is the gift you can give yourself, to stop fighting battles you cannot win, and to start winning the only battle that ever mattered, the battle within. You do not need to control them. You only need to command yourself. And in that command, in that stillness, in that quiet marble strength, you will find the freedom you have been searching for all along.